Got a picture of him with a big old giant telescope, man. I think he's actually seen Planet 7X. Gil Burchard.
Hello, Daniel.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going very well, my friend. Welcome to the Edge television broadcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, this is the first time you've been on the Edge there, Gil, and here's how the show rolls. We've got people watching the show. Some people are listening to it on TuneIn Radio. They send in questions through our chat line and through our Fast Blast link, and then we'll talk about, of course, Planet X and anything else that you're prepared to talk about or want to. If you have a segue, you want to segue into something else, we certainly can. This is a free-flowing interview and, kind of a stream of consciousness thing wherever it leads us, wherever the conversation leads us. So again, I appreciate you coming on the program. Gil, for those who have never heard your amazing research, why don't you sort of introduce yourself to our audience, who you are and how you got involved in this study field?
Well, I'm a senior engineer tech that was in the oil and gas industry, and I traveled quite a bit overseas, and I decided to pick up the challenge because I was a skeptic pertaining to this whole concept of Planet X, because it seemed like it just didn't meet some of the science that I was aware of, and so I decided to do a study on it because I had time coming back from China, and come to find out, I actually found some hard evidence, and that brought me to become an amateur astronomer after that, because I had to spend a lot of time, and I spent the last 3.5 years doing a study on this and doing calculations.
Mm-hmm. Well, wherever I Google Planet X, your name comes up.
Well, yeah, I'm getting a little bit popular, it seems like, because I'm the only one that brings actually scientific papers, and that actually found that the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans saw an object that was quite large.
Mm-hmm. You say they seen an object already, or is in their history?
Oh, it's in their history. It was documented. It was well documented. It was mislabeled for many, almost a century, as a supernova of 1054. But when modern times, when they went back and it's examined the text more closely, it showed that the supernova was about 2-3 months earlier, and that this object that they saw for 26 months, 13 months coming in, 13 months leaving, was a sizable object. It takes to see something that far out for that length of time, especially the way they qualified it at certain time periods, the visual perspective, that it's quite a large object. And so when I read the paper, they gave such great details that I took a stab at plotting its orbit.
Really?
And yes, and the results was quite startling, because it's an object that crosses Earth's path twice, once on the entry and once on the exit, and that the distance between entry and exit on Earth's planetary plane is exactly 150 to 152 days apart. Mm-hmm. Well, that rang a bell. Remember Noah's flood? Mm-hmm. It was 150 days that the Earth stayed flooded.
Okay.
And then in Revelation it says they will wish death for 5 months before the second event. CO6 is a meteor shower, and CO7 is a meteor shower. And it says they will wish death for 5 months before death comes. Mm-hmm. Well, 5 months is roughly 150 to 152 days.
Okay.
So, and this was just seen slightly over about 960 years ago. So there's no hard evidence that anyone has that points to an actual object of 3,600 years. That's guesstimation, if you want to call it, guesses. Mm-hmm. But there's no hard data backing any of this. Mm-hmm. And so I was the first, it seemed like I'm the first one to declare publicly, anyway, of scientific papers that point to a real object.
Okay. Now, why do you call that Planet 7X?
to separate from all of the obscure claims that are made. Some say this is a mini solar system. Some say it's a dwarf, a brown dwarf sun of some type. You name it. There's many claims of everything. So I wanted to separate when you have a conversation with people. Qualifying with a name tells you where your research data. There's many scientific articles where they give a separate name to the object that they're talking about. So you're referring back to the research done by a certain person. And so that's why I called it Planet 7. It also relates to approximate size of it. It's somewhere between, 6 to 7.5 times the diameter of Earth, according to the data.
Okay. All right. There are questions coming in. We'll go ahead and take a couple, and we'll come right back to that. And by the way, for those of watching the show, there is a link in Gil's bio section on the Edge's website there at the bottom, right underneath his guest website. It says free Planet 7X wall charts. We will be referring to those. Of course, if you click on it, depending on how your browser is set up, it may replace the Edge's show and then bring you to another website, or it may just create another page, in which case you can kind of see. But anyway, you can see we're going to be talking about his charts, which are free. And you can click on them and they'll enlarge. And so as Gil goes over those, there's several of them in there, and we'll be talking about those. So that is right there underneath in the bottom of Gil's bio section. All right, Gil, here we go. Let's talk to this question here. This is from the live chat. Put Yahweh first. All these pictures that we are seeing, Planet X and two suns, I've seen them too. A lot of postings on the net about double suns and that type of thing. Are they real, or are they fake, or just a combination?
Oh, they're real as far as those double suns, but what they are, they're sun dogs. They are mirages. See, they're quite common to anyone who studies the skies. Almost any astronomer would tell you this. That's why you're not seeing. There's 2 to 3 million amateur astronomers. You don't see them jumping onto the bandwagon saying that this is a planet. This is people who are not used to looking up at the sky and seeing a phenomena of this type, which is natural. This is a mirage. I guarantee if it would be real, I'd be telling you it would, but it's not. And so some of these things on the internet are Photoshop fakes,
of course,
whatever. But most of the stuff we see today is different types of sun. You can look it up in Wikipedia. It shows you maybe 5 or 6 examples, but there's even more than that of what these phenomena are. And that's why we can't zoom in with a telescope. You can't zoom in and see surface details on a mirage. In other words, a mirage is only good for inside the atmosphere. You won't get outside the atmosphere with it, like looking at a planet, like the surface of the moon, or Jupiter, or any of that. You won't see that level of detail on something which is it's mirage. You see?
Yeah. So, and of course, there's going to be fraudulent pictures up there. Everybody wants to, get their name out there. But but are you saying then that there are some that are real? And then, if they are real, wouldn't you be able to zoom in on those?
Yes, you would be, but there's no one zooming in on anything because it's not in our view yet. It's put this way. According to Kepler's law of the planetary motion, if you go with where they sent the Pioneer and Voyager probes, you look at their paperwork, articles and everything, they stated they were looking for this 10th planet. And if you go back and look at the Chinese data points to the exact same spot where they sent the Pioneer and Voyager probes. Okay? That's Sagittarius. One of the ways that you can tell that something is false on the internet is when they're having you saying, okay, we read a scientific article that says it's in the south of the universe, and they're looking polar south. Polar south is not south of the universe. That's called nadar in astronomy. Universe south is Sagittarius. It's on the ecliptic plane of Earth. Okay? for us to have two meteor showers across the Earth path twice, and with a pivot point of the sun, that locks you on to the planetary plane of Earth. It can't be not even a half a degree off of this ecliptic, it's called. Mm-hmm. And the Voyager and Pioneer probes, NASA went quiet in December of 1992. Dr. Harrington died mysteriously the following year. Mm-hmm. And that was 24 years away from the sun. Mm-hmm. If it reached the orbit of Neptune, it would take 16 years to reach the sun. Well, guess what? 16 years is about where we are right now. And if you look at the level effects on Earth, the volcanic activity, the earthquakes, the bird killed, fish killed, which is methane release, mm-hmm. And the magnetic north moving 12 times its normal rate, guess what direction it's moving? It's moving towards the south of the universe. Because remember, it's not polar south, it's towards Sagittarius. Mm-hmm. That's where. So, what affects a magnetic field to do that? Another magnetic field.
So you're saying then that there's evidence, although unseen, but it does have consequences for its existence.
We rely too heavily on our sighting, our sense of sight, mm-hmm. when we need to also rely on other things that we see around us besides mm-hmm. just this planet. Mm-hmm. Because the government has the ability to cloak an object. Remember when Reagan did that speech to the UN? Mm-hmm. They said if the whole world had a common threat, how countries would unite. Mm-hmm. And he said that common threat was from outer space.
Yes.
Okay? It wasn't about aliens he was talking. He was talking about this planet.
Wow.
Because of what happened right after that, didn't they put laser space-based weapons?
Yeah, it's called Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah, lasers is what's used to cloak an object. You can bend light with lasers. Mm-hmm. And you can go to my YouTube channel, Planet 7X, and look at my bonus 2 feature. At the end of that little bonus 2 feature, you see laboratory tests showing lasers and how they bend light. You can't see an object. It's cloaked completely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we have another question in for you. Now, how many years or how often does this object come toward the Earth?
It has a erratic orbit because it depends on what it collides with and how close it passes near other planets. Mm-hmm. If we had to put a number, it'd be closer to 360, not 3,600.
Really?
Yes. We have 14 cases in the Bible where we can put the same Asian model of the orbit of this object, do an overlay, and it matches the exact sequence of events that you can logically explain. You can't explain the miracle of the timing because that's God doing it. Mm-hmm. But you can explain many of the sequence of it because fiery hail during those time periods is meteors. That's what they didn't have modern terms for planet, mm-hmm. comets, asteroids. Mm-hmm. They had the words like fiery dragon of old. They call it the destroyer. They call it numerous things. Mm-hmm. Even almost all of the pagan gods were named after this planet.
Mm. Was that part of the one of the plagues of Egypt? Was it meteors?
Fiery hail. Yes. Remember how the 3 days of darkness happened? Mm-hmm. Well, remember also on Yeshua's sacrifice there was 3 hours of darkness?
Yes.
You see how there's a difference between 3 days and 3 hours? How do we get that contrast in the length of days? Is because during Yeshua, it was during a normal orbit. It had a normal 360-year period. And the model shows, remember, that was Passover. To make a solar eclipse, you need a moon.
Right, of course.
In a new moon state. A full moon's on the opposite side of Earth, which is Passover. And the moon can only give you 7.3 minutes of darkness. How do you get 3 hours of darkness? If the moon is not even in position, it's 180 degrees opposite side of Earth. The model shows us when an object 7 times the diameter of Earth travels across it, it gives you exactly 3 hours of darkness. We have outside text besides the Bible, secular reference, that the entire Earth was darkened for 3 hours. A lunar eclipse or solar eclipse from the moon can only give you a spot. Only a certain country or two can see this. And it can only happen for 7.3 minutes to 7.5 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you get the entire Earth darkened? It has to be a larger object. Now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And then what about where the in the Bible where it says that time stopped? Can this object account for that?
Okay, we're back.
Yeah. Can you hear me,
Daniel?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
isn't there a scripture or a text that says that time stopped in the Bible?
Yes. Well, in a reference, you're talking about Joshua's long day.
Right.
Where he had an extended time of daylight of 12 hours. In other words, instead of 12 hours of light, he had 24 hours of light.
Mm-hmm.
The model shows us, again, remember, there's 2 camps of thought. The astronomy camp says gravity is the ruling force in the universe. Then there's the physicist camp mm-hmm. that said the actual ruling force of the universe is electromagnetic. And if we try a gravity model, none of these biblical accounts work. But if we use the physicist model of electromagnetic ruling the universe, mm-hmm. guess what? Mm-hmm. All these models work.
Mm-hmm. The electrical part would that be considered plasma?
Yes, they say the vacuum of space is not a true vacuum according to physics. That it's like a lake of plasma. Remember, astronomers say there's 96% of matter missing. The physicists say there's no missing matter. It's in the form of plasma. It's in a lake of plasma. That's the fourth state of matter. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there's no need for dark energy and dark matter. They had to create that to try to answer where is the missing matter. Well, it's never been missing. It's just been figured by the physicists of it being in the form of plasma. We have actual evidence just recently, and I have a bonus feature that shows that also. Mm-hmm. It shows where Comet Siding Springs, and it's also on the DVD that I offer. When Comet Siding Springs passed by Mars, the tail of the plasma tail, remember, physicists say that the tail of a comet is plasma, not ice particles, mm-hmm. like the astronomers say. So they had estimated that when this tail was going to cross over Mars, there'd be an electrical discharge between that small rock in space and that large planet. Mm-hmm. Well, when NASA was showing it, just before the tail crossed, remember they have like a 7-second delay before they're watching it before they show the public. They pulled away, not showing it to the public. Mm-hmm. But luckily there's an amateur astronomer out of Portugal that went to the Canary Islands and he filmed it with his telescope. Mars lit up like a Christmas tree, like a huge, all the way around it, like a flash, like on a camera. That's equal to like an EMP wave hitting it. Mm-hmm. The electrical discharge from that comet hit that planet and was clearly seen. This also happened during Joshua's long day. The model shows us when Earth is entering into the tail of this comet, which is 7 times larger than Earth, the energy from the sun going into the North and South Pole is reduced. That causes us to rotate. It's reduced by 4.5 to 5.5% compounded hourly. Well, guess what you get within 24 to 28 hours later? The Earth stops on its axis, giving you an extended day by 12 hours. Because the daylight side, now on the opposite side of Earth, you had an extended night, which was documented by the Chinese.
Let me ask you something, Gil. There are some NASA pictures of corona ejections from the sun. I call them space impregnation. But these ejections of the sun, is that plasma, and could that not cause any of these anomalies?
Yes, that is plasma. When it hits our magnetosphere, that's where you get the aurora borealis effect, those northern lights. Well, when we enter this comet tail, the northern lights will come all the way down to the equator and be many times thicker, and they'll howl like a trumpet. Remember when the northern lights are active in Alaska, they howl. They make sounds like trumpets. Remember in the book of Revelation where some of the trumpets will sound? Well, you're going to hear one. When we go through the tail of this object again, and it'll be like an EMP almost. That's why all generators around the globe will have to be turned off about 3 days prior to us crossing into the tail.
Will we have a heads up when that happens?
Yes. I believe there's a reference in the Bible that tells us this. Jonah's warning to Nineveh.
Okay.
That happened about 40 days before Hezekiah, where the shadow went backwards. Well, Jonah went to Nineveh. Oh, you back?
Yeah, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Jonah went to a town. He didn't perform one miracle. He only said, in 40 days your doom comes. And yet the whole town went into repentance mode. Try that today. Go to any town and say, repent, and see what you get.
You get thrown in jail?
Right. Probably so. Now, what is it that was different for Jonah than us today? Was it because these people in Nineveh didn't have internet and TV, and that they were in tune with their natural surroundings, that they saw fish kill, bird kills, earthquakes, volcanoes going off, weird weather patterns, seasonal changes? They knew something was wrong, and the only thing Jonah had to do was point to the sky. And guess what? In the software models, at 40 days is just about where you can see it. It just rounded the sun coming out from the other side. And the only thing he had to do was point at it. And that was 40 days prior to the sun going backwards for Hezekiah. It's not a sundial. In the Hebrew, it's steps.
Really?
And if the sun, and the calculation shows us that Earth tilted 26 to 28 degrees. And it came so close to Earth, it changed Earth's orbit. It expanded it slightly, and that's when all calendars globally changed from 360-day year to 365 and a quarter day year. Was when Hezekiah shadow went back.
Gil, let me ask you, the Great Deluge, Noah's flood, as referred to. Some suggest that previous to that, when it didn't rain, that the Earth was enveloped in sort of like a misty vapor, and that something shifted the Earth's axis. Do you subscribe with that thought? And is that again a result of this object passing by in this debris field?
I agree with part of what you said. The part that I would even add more to was it was more than just vapor. It was a canopy of water around the Earth, probably held in place with it's called metallic hydrogen, which is just takes a few molecules or a very thin layer that you're able to have, and it would hold huge weight, and it would be translucent or transparent. It's in other outside texts besides the Bible, it says that 7 floodgates of heaven opened up, which I believe it to be meteors that broke through the canopy. It opened up 7 portals.
Wow.
It took 40 days for the earth to get flooded. After that, the earth stayed flooded for 150 days, and then Noah felt a great wind come over the water, and then he saw the water recede. That great wind is from the impact of a larger meteor, and that was the pressure wave he felt.
Okay.
That made the Gulf of Mexico. On the opposite side of Earth, it hit with such force because remember, continental crust is just held on there with gravity. It's not really glued on; it's just held there. 71% of our crust was ejected from the opposite side. That surface crust is what is the exact volume of our moon. Ocean layer is our second crust, or second layer, like on an onion.
Mm-hmm.
Continental crust is the top layer, which is free floating. That's why our continents are separating. That's why you had Pangea that was all held on to one side. How is it that much weight could be on one side of the Earth? The wobble would be so great, life would have a difficult time even forming.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was landlocked, that's why you had Pangea. Now, when that 71% of the crust was knocked off, then the continents separate. Well, you had one big ocean because the water receded, just like Noah said. You see?
Yeah, where did that water recede to, Gil?
What we call oceans today.
Okay, well,
You see, the water was on top of the continent.
Okay.
Remember,
if it covered the entire Earth, then where did the water recede to allow the continents to come up through it?
Just like you would right now, if you go in wouldn't you have to dig a hole, basically?
Mm-hmm.
You have to remove. 71% of our top crust was removed. It now formed the moon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll go with that. All right, let me. I saw somebody post this in the chat. I'm going to go back up to it. It says, "The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof heavy upon it. It shall fail, not rise again." But the earth reeling like a drunkard back and forth, is that part of this Planet 7X debris field?
Yes, he said in the end days it would be like Noah. Mm-hmm. We have to understand the time of Noah very well. You see, a large meteor hit the Earth the second time.
Really?
It was smaller meteors that hit us the first time. Well, that's what's going to happen again. In March of this next time event, half the Earth will go through a meteor shower, because the backside, the nighttime side, is protected. It's the daytime side in March that gets hit. 152 days later, it's opposite. It's the nighttime side that gets hit. And within that meteor shower will be a large one called Wormwood. It is described as a mountain-sized asteroid that will hit the Earth. It hits Earth so hard that Earth will wobble like a drunkard, like a hut in the wind. Mm-hmm. It's cracked, and every mountain and island is shifted from its place.
Okay. Well, when it says that in the days of Noah, well, obviously there was a flood there. So are you suspecting there will be another catastrophic flood?
No, because the Almighty told us he would not destroy the earth by flood. He said by fire the next time.
Okay. Now, you're down there in South Louisiana, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are you in the impact area?
Right now, yes. All of, remember it says 1/3 of the grass, 1/3 of trees. Later it says 1/3 of the rivers. Mm-hmm. They're describing continental crust without, remember, they don't have the word continental crust in their vocabulary, but they're describing continental crust. Only half the globe, if you take a globe, a 3D image of the Earth, and look at what half of the Earth is 1/3 of the crust, that's North and South America. Asia, Europe, and Africa is 2/3. Only half the world is going to be hit. This half of the Earth is going to be hit by a meteor shower in March, as well as 5 months later. That finishes you off. Remember, they suffer for 5 months before death comes, which is the second meteor shower, but that's at nighttime around the end of August or beginning of September.
Okay,
where this would be at.
So your calculations, you've got it pegged for a March date.
March or April. The Hebrew months fall in between the Gregorian calendar, March and April. Mm-hmm. It'll happen somewhere in there. We have to be attentive, because right now our view is blocked. If we could see it, we could predict you first a month, then a week, then a day, and then an hour. Mm-hmm. But right now, until we see it, then we have confirmation when. But I can tell you one thing, from the signs we're seeing on Earth, If anybody is alert on what they're seeing, and you know about the way electromagnetic or gravity, whichever affects things, then this would concern you, because these all are the hallmarks of an approaching body. All of the planets are heating up.
Well, in the movie Armageddon with Bruce Willis, in the very beginning, it opens up with rogue apparent meteors hitting the Earth, just running similarly, just running through space. But it was the pre particles and debris field of the giant object to follow. So that could substantiate, or at least give a sort of a picture of what you're describing. But when you're talking about a March date, obviously we're clear of March. So does that mean we're clear this year?
Yes. March has already passed. We're looking for remember, a Hebrew year begins and starts around the March-April scenario. You don't look at biblical reckoning and think Gregorian calendar. You got to follow the Hebrew calendar, which actually starts around the harvesting of the barley, not September, because the Pharisees changed the calendar. They have an agriculture calendar that starts in September. That's man-made. That's not biblical or scriptural. So it starts with the harvest of the barley, and you have to be attentive. It's not something that you can predict ahead of time, and you have to witness it. And it's remember, he said he'd show us a great sign in heaven before he arrives. This is the sign that we have to pay attention for and looking at. And he says you're not going to see it before. You're going to see earthquakes rising like the pains of a woman giving birth. And we do see that, and it will be during the Pacific generation, before the generation that saw Israel form will die out. All of this will be fulfilled. NASA cannot predict Damascus being a ruinous heap. They cannot predict Libya falling, Egypt falling, Syria falling, Iraq falling, exactly like the biblical stories are saying. And this happens, the generation that saw Israel formed, roughly, if you do it the Hebrew way, they're 83 years old. They're almost dead. They're almost out of it. So we're running at the end of the biblical timeline here of on things to be fulfilled.
Okay. All right. We have a question for you, Gil. This is from James West in our live chat. First of all, he says, hello, Gil. His question is, will some of the planet be destroyed and some of the planet turn into a new heaven and new earth? Will they be on the same, I guess he's asking if that's the same earth.
We are going to go through this old earth all the way through the next millennium. He doesn't make a new earth. He takes the old earth and casts it into outer darkness, and he makes a new earth at the end of that 1,000-year reign. The heaven that he's talking about, there's 3 heavens in the Torah. The first heaven is where the birds fly. That's our atmosphere.
Right.
Second heaven is where the planets and stars dwell. Okay. And the third heaven, it says only where the Father dwells. Not even Yeshua dwells there. Says only the Father. That's another dimension outside of this one.
Where the Bible says that the devil sort of is the prince of the power of the air, would we consider that the first heaven?
Yes, that's the atmosphere.
Okay, so is he and his hordes, are they restricted permanently to the first heaven? Can they not move to the second or third?
I'm not sure about the second. The third one, no, because the Torah clearly says only the Father dwells there. No one else dwells with this outside of this dimension. It says that the Father is not male, he's not female, he's not human. He has no form. He's 7 spirits. Well, the word spirit in Hebrew can also mean energy. Well, guess what? That matches physics when you talk about the first laws of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created, cannot be destroyed. It always existed. You just described the Father again. Okay?
Okay.
So before all of this was created, energy had to exist, which is the Father. And he says it's 7 levels of it. And so, you know how some creationists said there was a big bang that started from nothing. Well, they broke the first law of the thermodynamics. You have to start off with energy because energy cannot be created. The same energy today is the same energy as we had at day one of creation. There's no new energy. It's the same amount. There's a limit to this universe. Okay? And there's also a minimum to which is the Planck unit. Well, if you got a maximum on the length of something and the minimum of how small it can get, that's called a digit. Well, if you got a digital universe, that means it's a hologram.
Interesting.
You're living in the Elohim matrix that he built specifically for us. Specifically for us. And that's and physics proves this. This is not outside science. This is, he created it, and he says you will gain knowledge where you could figure things out. It's his knowledge that we're figuring out, not man. Man didn't create science. We're just refiguring what was already there. Observe. Science is observation. Sometimes we mix up theory and almost claim a theory as if it's a law. Shouldn't mix the two up. And science is observation.
So is it possible then we're in a 3D hologram?
Without a doubt, we are. But it's a matrix that he created for us. He can destroy it. Remember Einstein said that all matter is as if you took light and changed it to a different frequency. That is what matter is. Well, light is energy. Okay, and all matter around you, the periodic table is just energy changed to a form that you can observe. It all boils down to energy. And that's Einstein's formula, that's physics, that's the first law of the thermodynamics, but that's the essence of the Father himself. Remember how the Father says, I know your heart, your mind, I know every animal's needs, I know your needs, I know every dark secret that was ever said in any secret meeting behind any closed door. How is that possible? Because everything around you is made of him.
It says when he says he holds all things together by the power of his word, is that just simply another way to say that I am everything?
There you go. Yes. Because they didn't have certain words. And remember, we're dealing with an ancient language. The way it's described and the way it fits like a hand in glove.
Pat's Angels wants to know, what is in the third heaven?
Only the Father. It's the energy.
Just
additional
energy.
energy. The energy of the Father, 7 layers. He doesn't say how many layers of his energy he makes to create this universe. But he's outside as well as inside this universe. You can consider this a thought in his own essence.
Hey, go ahead.
The Almighty is so vast you can't comprehend. That's how vast, and it's all knowing.
Got another great question come in to you, Gil. Does anything live on planet 7X?
Seriously doubt it. Remember how there's what you want to call it, a Goldilocks zone where only Earth is at, even Mars is outside that it would be very hard even to get life to, even if we seeded it on Mars for it to work. This goes 360, it goes way past Neptune and Pluto, almost double the distance before it returns back. Very unlikely. I think there's only 2 major life forms. I'd say angels, some have fallen, and there's humans. And there would be any crossbreeding that they may do between, because that's what the flood was about, to destroy life forms that he did not sanction. So fallen angels, if you want to call them aliens, which they don't want to be called for because they don't want to point you back to the Bible, but that's what they are.
Okay. Another, just a comment. Somebody said they listened to you on another program, and they thought that you said that Planet 7X would hit this year, but you're not saying that, are you?
What I said was I was concerned about March 26th because that's the only time that I could figure out with using Jupiter that Leo, which is drawn with 11 stars, with the Jupiter being the 12th star, that there would be a possible, remember, it fell within Passover.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, because in Revelation it mentions this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's giving us a lineup that should be a date that we will see in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not this March. That's why I said for us to be attentive. I also repeated multiple times, I have no crystal ball, I cannot tell the future. Okay, so only thing I can alert people, just like if you would look at a calendar and the calendar said there was going to be an eclipse or a blood moon, mm-hmm. I'm only alerting you of a lineup. Whether it happens or not, I cannot tell. I can't tell the future. Mm-hmm. Sure. Now, I see nothing in the near future that would alarm me according to the astronomy model. So it doesn't mean it won't happen this next March. It means that maybe it brings a satellite moon, a small, debris that shines like the 12th star. That would make up the crown of 12 stars over Virgo. We don't know. We have to wait and see. All I'm saying is we're coming to the end. It says seal 3 is economic collapse and seal 4 talks about a famine. Mm-hmm. His people who follow his instructions in the Torah or in the Bible says on those 2 years you're to stock up 1 year of food. Well, his people are not affected by economic collapse or a famine because they've already listened to what he said. Mm-hmm. Now, that meant seal 3 or 4 would have to happen either a Sabbath or a Jubilee. If we have these correct, we only have one left. That's a Jubilee. We may see economic collapse or famine coming up here this year. Mm-hmm. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you definitely, right. But I and many others are prepared by following his words. He said, on these 2 years, you stock up 1 year supply of food and supplies for a Sabbath and a Jubilee.
Mm-hmm. So, Gil, you say that you are prepared?
Yes.
Okay.
Many other people are too.
Okay. Well, that's obviously good advice. Even Homeland Security says people should stock up for catastrophes of different source. But one more question here came in. Let me get to this before we go to our break here. Now, you said that the aliens are the fallen angels, but there seems to be varieties of aliens. There's grays, reptilians, almost as if there may be a hierarchy. And it does seem like the Bible describes maybe a hierarchy of evil as far as demons go themselves. So when somebody says a gray or a reptilian or an insectoid or whatever other kinds, or a Nordic, whatever other kinds there are, and some say there's at least 54 species, or is that just the revelation that there are hierarchies of demons and that's what that's representing?
I would go more down to earth on this in a way of, he said in the end days it'd be like the time of Noah. Noah, we know it had genetic manipulation of even humans versus angels cross, these Nephilim, they would call them, that we may see crossbreeds today, but they won't be calling Nephilim because they would be declaring it. Suppose they make their own forms of aliens to do their, to make this ruse that they came from another planet. Mm-hmm. They're not going to tell you that they were kicked out of heaven. That would definitely misidentify them as the ones you're not to follow. So they have to come up with a secondary story to try to mm-hmm. fool the people. There's also investigators that interviewed these abductionists, people who have been abducted, and they were what you call that? They were different cells were taken from their body.
Right.
Okay.
Babies taken.
One of the things
probes
that most investigators did not mention in the Bible because they didn't want to lose credibility, with shame on them, is that they found out that when they mentioned Yeshua or Jesus' name, the abduction immediately halts.
Yes.
Well, if you had another alien from another, you think he knew about Yeshua and that he would be scared of him or not?
Yeah.
Probably, that means something else right there.
Okay. Well, listen, Gil, we got to stop it right there, right at the top of the hour. We'll try to pick that up when we come back in about 5 minutes. Anything you'd like to say about what people can find on your website?
Yeah, anytime I've posted all of my research material that I can post without violating copyright laws, because some of these scientific papers I can't post because they're copyrighted, but they can go there and download the research. I urge people to check the Hebrew. When you find something that doesn't match the present English text, just don't go to a concordance. Go back to the original Hebrew to see what it really says.
Okay. Okay. All right, Gil, just stay on the line. We'll be right back with you in 5 minutes. Okay?
Yes, that sounds good.
All right. All right, everybody, you're watching and/or listening to the Edge Television broadcast. Some great information from Gil Broussard. If you got a question for Gil in the second hour, when we come back in about 5 minutes, after a 5-minute break, you can go to theedgeam.com, click on the Fast Blast link, or put your question there in the live chat where Jade, our moderator, put them to me. All right, here we go. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back.
Us we must see a sign in the sky, sign in the sky, sign.
There's a huge, hidden, heavenly body lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system.
Now, to a wicked and adulterous generation, they will ignore the sign. They will ignore the sign.
Look, we can see and we can determine, hey, that's a sin unto death.
Unless we get on our high horse, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ.
You have escalation of volcanic activity, earthquake, fish and bird life dying. We have the magnetic north, we have the sun acting up, and we have perturbation of comets and planets. These are the signs. Anybody with any sense that has science background say, we have a problem, we have a problem, we have a problem.
They made instrument contact from my studies was in 1992. Now, in 1992, they went totally silent on the subject of Planet 8. There were no longer publications, everything just went silent. It is the most talked about object in the Bible and the least known. They said 1/3 of the trees, 1/3 of the grass, and later they say 1/3 of the rivers. Only half of the earth can be hit. So what half of the earth has 1/3 of the continental crust? That is North and South America. Whenever you look at Revelation and other parts of the Bible, it matches the science and gives us quite good details on what to expect. I mean, they give things like the earth will, at one point, is hit by a fiery mountain so hard that earth wobbles like a drunkard hut in the wind. That's a viewpoint from space. They didn't know the earth was a globe. They thought it was, how do you shake a globe like a hut in the wind if they thought it was flat, supposedly. I think I'm the first, in fact I know I'm the first one that was able to find data, actual hard data, or maybe that's why they're still keeping me around. Planet X, according to the model at the present, is in between Jupiter and the asteroid belt.
So I say to people, wake up. Wake up.
Enlightening, entertaining, and controversial. This is the Edge Radio program with your host, Daniel Lott.
Reasonable people finally just have to come out of their shells and say, look, there's other stuff going on.
Naturally, the public is going to start asking questions. Why have we been taught these things so wrongly in all the schools?
We are going to be talking about Class 1 data. Class 1 data is physical evidence that people can look at for themselves. They can touch it. It's in a museum.
Just got to get the facts to the people. You know, who knows when and if the government's ever going to come forward.
Enlightening, entertaining, and controversial. This is the Edge Radio program with your host, Daniel Lott.
right, go hit it.
You're listening to the Edge Radio program, a show so hot, your radio might catch on fire.
And welcome back to the Edge Television broadcast. My name is Daniel Lott. We've got a great guest on the program tonight for you, Gil Broussard. If you got a question for Gil, go to the edgeam.com website, click on the Fast Blast link, or join him in the live chat now. This program will begin to replay immediately after the program in our main player. We'll put it up in our YouTube channel as well as podcasted, and put it in our TuneIn radio channel as well. That TuneIn, of course, is where you can listen to the program on your whatever phone, tablet, or device, or program platform you have, all across there. Remember, there's a link at the bottom of Gil's bio section there for the Planet 7X wall charts. We'll go over some of those in the second hour here, and then so you can follow along, but be sure that hopefully it'll open up a new window where you can still listen to the program as Gil explains it. So let's go back to our Newsmaker line and welcome back Gil Broussard. Gil, welcome back. Hello, Gil. Hello, Gil Broussard. Can you hear me now? Hello, Gil. Sound like he's eating. Okay. Hello, Gil. Ship to shore. Hello, Gil Broussard. Welcome back to the Edge.
Hello, Daniel.
Yeah, welcome back. Hey, good to have you back. All right, now listen, Gil, it was a great first hour. You talked about a lot of topics there, and got a lot of questions coming in. So I'm just going to get right back into it. Here's a question come in. Now, will the elite use false flags to cover up what's coming? And while they cover it up, are they preparing for this event?
Yes, they have been preparing since 1992 or even earlier. That's where a lot of our trillions of dollars have disappeared. I've had confirmation by some of these secret organizations that tried to recruit me to be part of their group, that these underground facilities exist. And
really?
that they will cause a false flag event of a war in the Middle East that will spread to terrorism in Europe and in Western nations. Remember, in the Book of Revelation, it says a quarter of the world population is under the threat of death. A lot of people say a quarter of the world population would die. It doesn't say that. It says it's under the threat of death. That's terrorism. Quarter of the world population is Western nations.
Mm-hmm. So where's the Middle East fit in all this?
Oh, it fits in. It literally names Libya will fall, Egypt will fall, Syria, Iraq, and Iran will fall.
So are you suggesting then that the elite in Washington D.C., first with George Bush and now with Obama, are toppling these nations, but they're really being led by demonic forces to fulfill the end time revelation scenario?
In an indirect way, whether or not they know it or not. Just like the Mahdi will create a false miracle. All right? Well, let me help you with pointing out what his false miracle is going to be. The astronomy community, because it takes 50 years before books are changed, are still holding on to the universe being a gravity model, not a magnetically ruled universe. They're going to predict the wrong half of this earth being hit by a meteor shower. They're going to predict the Middle East, Europe, Africa, Asia. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So these people, because remember, they just did terrorism because of the war in SEAL 4. Now we're the peace agreement already happened, which is Seal 5. Now they're asking for visas to leave the danger zone to go to Western nations. Well, the Western nations are not going to give them a visa, so they're trapped within their country.
Well, I'm not seeing that. It looks to me like Obama's allowing all kind of visas for the whole Middle East to come up over here. Certainly Europe has opened their doors.
Yeah, but this is after the peace agreement, after the war, after this event. See, we haven't had 1/4 world under terrorism yet. That drops the economy. Mm-hmm. After that happened, will be a peace agreement, which is what first thing that the Islamic Mahdi has to do. He has to bring peace to the Middle East. Second thing he has to have a sign in the heavens. Well, that's our planet. It'll look like a new star. Then he will perform a miracle that no other man can do. Well, he's going to the Middle East and telling these Muslims who are trapped in the country, said, don't worry, I'm going to change times of law. I'm going to change the time. I'm going to change the rotation of the Earth by 12 hours and cause it to fall on our enemies instead of destroying our enemy, which is a 12-hour delay in Earth's rotation. 12-hour delay puts it on the opposite side of Earth. Exactly what happened during the time of Joshua's long day. You see, it's the daytime side that gets hit. Yeshua is first taking away, which is a remnant, and they're not going to heaven that first second. They're going into the wilderness, it says. Mm-hmm. He comes mid of night. That means it's a safe side, the nighttime side. That night on that opposite side will be 24 hours long. Remember where it has 5 virgins and that 10 virgins,
right.
5 are wise,
5 had oil, 5 didn't, yeah.
In a Hebrew wedding, only the bridesmaids carry lamps.
Okay.
The bride is 144,000, but they're talking about are bridesmaids. They're 5 times more of them than they are the bride. Only the wise have 2 portions of oil. A portion of oil is supposed to take you through one night of 12 hours. The wise have 2 because that night is going to be 24 hours. When the first portion of oil is burnt, the foolish are asking for more oil. They say, we don't have enough. Go and get you some more. They have to go back to town. So when the wise are just finished trimming their wicks and replenishing oil and lighting, a shout goes out that the groom has arrived. Mid of night. Now that's mid of a 24. That's not midnight. That's a modern term. He said mid of night. That night would be 2 12-hour sections.
Interesting. You know, you were saying in the first hour about the fish die-offs and the bird die-offs, Gil Broussard. And whenever I hear about the fish die-off or anything in the sea, I think of Fukushima, and that to me is a logical way to explain that. But is it a combination of Fukushima nuclear radiation spill, or is it in fact all coming from the coming Planet 7X debris field?
When it's associated with the northern Pacific, it's probably a combination. But the rest of the oceans, radiation doesn't explain because it's not there. Not in the abundance anyway that Fukushima released. What's happening is all of the planets are warming up because the extra magnetic fields that this is causing, it's causing resistance in the torque of the Earth. It causes it to heat up just like electric motor slightly, because we have to rewrite our books because it's a plasma and electromagnetic universe. Mm-hmm. Well, therefore, if you heat up that core just even a half a degree to a degree, that lava is going to expand. Therefore, your crust has to give. And that's going to cause earthquakes. It's going to release methane. Methane is going to kill birds and fish and even certain small mammals.
Okay, so we're going to be you're saying we're going to be seeing more of that.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, the Bible talks about there be signs in the heavens and wonders, and it does say that at some point that we are to look to the signs. In fact, there's some chiding going on where it says, "Know you not when the sky is red and lowering that that the end or the darkness is coming or the catastrophe is coming." So some say that the Old Testament teaches that you're not supposed to look into the heavens. You're not supposed to be a stargazer, and look at the planets. Do you agree with that, or is that a misinterpretation as well?
Depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at the zodiac, which is the occult form, and you're trying to predict your day-to-day life, that's what it says don't do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at astronomy at the nighttime, what Daniel did that. That's how the Magi knew that the Messiah was born. Okay, that's how even there was a sign in the heaven when Abraham was born. There was a sign in the heaven when Joseph of Egypt, when the nighttime skies bowed to him, because earth tilted. Remember Joseph's dream was at 17. He was in Egypt at age 40 when the earth tilted and the skies literally bowed to him. And that's proven to us by the Nebra sky disk. I have a video on that. Wow. that people can see. Nice. It's an artifact out of Europe that proves a certain date and time. It gives it the date because the lineup in that pattern of stars on that disk gives it an exact date. Mm-hmm. And from that date, it shows us that Earth tilted 26 to 28 degrees. Mm-hmm. Earth has tilted 4 times in its past. The last time this thing came close to Earth was during Hezekiah. And Revelation is talking about this next time to be the worst in all of Earth's history. Mm-hmm. And if Noah's flood was not the worst, this next one it's claiming this next time is going to be the worst. We're in for a time.
Doesn't the Bible say that God names the stars?
Yes.
So if he's naming them, I mean, it can't be a bad thing to look up there and see what their names are. At least try to discern that. All right, let's get another question for you, Gil. This comes from looks like Marjorie Glenn, but I think you might have already answered this question. It says, "When do you think this thing will hit us?" Well, you've alluded to it several times earlier in the broadcast. We'll just really kind of move on. Marjorie, if you got another question, please send it through. There are those that say that in the end times, and I've had a guest on this program even said that they're going to flee to Israel. So is Israel really where God's chosen people are supposed to be, or can we be anywhere on the globe and still be God's people and survive this?
Depends on which taking away that you're talking about, because there's 2 definite, defined differently taking aways. Remember, remove the word rapture, put the actual word, because one is a taking away to heaven, the other one is a taking away to the wilderness. So we can't define both of those taking aways as being under the term rapture. That's why it's throwing off people. Put it back in its original term. I'll pull one of the references. There's more than one. I think Isaiah has one, but this is Joel, Joel, chapter 2, verse 30 to 32. It says, "And I shall give signs in the heaven, and upon the earth blood and fire and columns of smoke." Blood and fire and columns of smoke represents a volcanic activity. Signs in heaven is going to be this planet coming. Okay, that's causing it. The next verse, it says, "The sun is turned into darkness and the moon into blood." You cannot have a double eclipse in the natural. It takes a third object to make you a double eclipses are mentioned multiple times in the Bible. And that cannot happen in the natural. This tells you that planet 7X is here. Before the coming and the great day and the awesome day of Yahovah. And it shall be that everyone who calls on my name of Yahovah shall be delivered. Now he gives a qualifying point to that. "For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape, as Yahovah has said, and among the remnant whom Yahovah has called." This is not for the sinful, adulterous generation that's ignoring the signs. In Revelation, it says the whole world is Babylon right now.
I would agree with that.
Unless you're like Abraham and stepping out of it, because remember, Abraham wasn't born Hebrew. It's his actions later in life that define him as a Hebrew, of stepping out of the system we have today. And he says, the ones who shows up and follows he says on Passover, you're required, because the word, what we call feast in Christianity, is actually mekrah, okay, which means rehearsal. That rehearsal for Passover, you're required to show up in Jerusalem for that rehearsal pattern. Well, one of these rehearsal patterns is going to be the real event. this rehearsal is getting you prepared for a real event, and this is where Yeshua comes to meet us and brings us to a place of safety in the wilderness. Now, the second taken away, which is 3.5 years later, you can be anywhere on the earth. It says the dead are first, then the living, and then you're brought to heaven. This says a remnant, and you're required to be on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, and you're going into the wilderness. Wilderness has never been referred to heaven, because this is following a Hebrew wedding. The bride has to go to a place where she sanctifies or purifies herself, mikvah, before she can go into the ceremony of a wedding. And we skip that part. Now, Christianity go boom, straight into marriage. No. In the Hebrew wedding, the bride has to purify herself. It's called a mikvah. And her bridesmaids have to go through a rehearsal and everything. Mm-hmm. So it follows a Hebrew wedding.
Gil, do you participate with the feast days? Do you follow those?
Yes, I do now, because they are rehearsal patterns. Remember, like he said, for a Sabbath year in Jubilee to stock up food, and he says, get out of debt on those years. Banks are supposed to be forgiving debts every 7 years, but they're not. They're keeping people enslaved and in debt. Well, and if we were to follow his instructions, we'd be much better off.
So is Bernie Sanders onto something when he says that the banks are the root of the problem of unemployment and basically why people can't pay off their college loans? Is he onto something there?
Well, he wasn't the first one that coined that. There's thousands of people said usury, which was they used to cut the heads off of people who would charge interest, because it's common knowledge, anybody that knows math. If you're loaning $100 out, but you're asking for $112 back, eventually you'll own all the money.
Agreed. All right, Gil, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and go to your wall charts there. And the first one that comes up on your website there, or where the link is on the Edge's website, is the New Jerusalem slide. What is that? What is that telling us there? What are you showing people that?
Well, biblically, he says that once you believe in him, he says, go ahead and challenge me. Well, I challenged him with a calculator. Sorry, but that's the way I do. I do things.
All right.
And what's interesting is these parameters. Remember how he walked and he measured a real object. And I took engineering formulas of what we use in the oil field on vessels. It says that the New Jerusalem comes out of the second heaven, okay, and it comes into the first. And we define the first heaven is where our atmosphere is, where the birds fly. Second heaven is space, where the planets and stars are. So it comes out of the second heaven into our first heaven.
Okay.
Well, that's the vacuum of space coming into an atmosphere of pressure of 14.7 pounds. I said, well, this structure has to hold pressure of an atmosphere. So I looked up the measurements, and I qualified these measurements by looking up the way the Hebrew units were, and I came up with my own chart that all of the Hebrew units measure is based on the measurements of the way the human body is set.
Really?
And we have one of, I think, Solomon's gates, where he made it X amount of cubits wide, and that gate still exists today. So when we take that, it tells us that a cubit is roughly 17.5 inches. Well, when we reverse that to the human body, it means the human had a height of 5'10", which I believe is the height of Yeshua as well as Adam. Each had the height of 5'10". Well, this is the basis, because they didn't have furlongs. The Hebrew state of measurement would have been stadians. They're close to the same, but there are differences. So when we do the multiplier of how wide the city is. The city is actually 1,325 miles across. That's roughly about half of the United States from from mid to the coast.
Okay.
And to hold pressure, you need a dome-like structure or a sphere. That's the only structures that can hold such a pressure of 14.7 pounds pressure. So it says the wall is 210 foot thick. So when I took our pressure vessel calcs and I automatically had in there steel, which is 36,000 tensile strength, and when I calculated how thick would this wall have to be for a vessel 1,325 miles across with 14.7 pounds pressure, it said if the wall was made out of steel, it would have to be 1,428 feet thick. So I said, well, that doesn't work. So let's try titanium. Titanium had a tensile strength of 65,000, almost double. What a calc showed that the wall thickness had to be 787 feet thick. So I was about ready to give up, and this lady passed behind me. She says, what are you doing? I said, I don't have a strong enough material to make my funnel work. And what come out of her mouth, she says, well, diamond's the hardest thing. And only a lady would think like that. It was stumping me until she said that. So I said, well, yeah, diamond is only carbon. Carbon is I think, the third most abundant substance in the universe.
Okay.
So I looked up the properties of diamond. It had a hard and soft diamond. I took the midpoint. When I ran the calcs, it gave me 210 foot thick. The next sentence says the wall is as clear as glass. Well, steel and titanium is not clear. Diamond is. Then it says each gate is like a pearl, a sphere. Well, you can't have flat hinged gates on a pressure vessel. A spherical gate is the only way you can hold pressure, like a ball valve.
Okay.
And it says there's 12. Then it says there's 12 foundations under it. So that took care of the dimensions. And then I was looking at, okay, he says he laid out a city in a square, but he doesn't say the dimensions of it. So the only other thing that the Bible says that he made was Eden. So when I took these exact dimensions, 1,325, I put the center of it over over Mount Zion, where the temple is, and I put it on Google Earth to the exact measurements. And guess what? When you go to the eastern gate, that's exactly between the Nile and the Euphrates, which the Garden of Eden was east of Eden. Eden is the foundation that he did. This dome city is this is Eden. And he built a city in the center of it in a square. So how big is the square? Well, when I started the square in the center again, when I stretched it out, the corners of the square is exactly from the Euphrates to the Nile. Well, this square in relation to the square is exactly fits Fibonacci sequence. There's no way they could have guessed this. There's no way that they could have guessed the square, which is given, this square property is given to the Israelites, and that the circle was the base, which is Eden, which was removed from our sight, and that the eastern gate would give you exactly the Tigris and Euphrates, which is in Iraq. This is a satellite view. They didn't have satellite. And there's no way they could have guessed these parameters to work.
Well, so are you saying that then it was just divine revelation then, a proof of divine revelation?
A little bit more than that, because he was carried up there and he was shown this and he was asked to measure. So it's not a vision he had. He measured a real object.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you what, then, Gil, let's go ahead and go to the next one. This is the 7 Seals of Revelation timeline, that people can click on there in your bio section there. What does that chart there contain?
Say this again. I missed this.
The second thing on your free chart that you offer on your website is called the 7 Seals of Revelation Timeline. Explain that chart there for us.
Okay. Let me get it here for a second here. The chart. Remember how it says Jacob's trouble is supposed to happen?
Yeah.
But we're not really taught what is Jacob's trouble. Well, Jacob's trouble was his marriages. He had to go through 2. He was trying to marry the one that he loved, but he was tricked. Well, Jacob's trouble is equivalent to that time frame. And then when you go back, remember the Neber disc I told you about gives an exact date of Joseph of Egypt.
Yep.
Well, from that we can calculate when they entered Canaan. And the Father said, when you enter Canaan, that will be your first Jubilee. Well, this Jubilee that we're in is the 70th Jubilee, which is significant. That's Daniel's prophecy. Well, in 2001 is when the beginning of the millennium started, believe it or not.
Really?
Remember in the millennium, there's a war at the end. Remember where he releases Satan again, and there's a war at the end?
Mm-hmm.
There's also a war at the beginning.
Really?
Which is what he just gave us. And he said it's going to be called Jacob's trouble. Well, Jacob's trouble, remember, he had 7 years he worked. And when he was married, he was tricked by someone he didn't know anything about. Well, from 2001, if you reverse the roles, now we're the bride, we're looking for a groom.
Okay.
We were tricked. We were tricked by not knowing the identity of someone in 208.
Okay.
And he went into office at the end of the Sabbath year.
Got it.
Okay. And he was called what? Some people called him a Messiah. Mm-hmm. Well, that was the false groom. Now we have to wait another 7 years. The catcher is that there's a Jubilee. You can't get married in a Jubilee. So the marriage ceremony will have to take place the following year. Well, actually, it's this part of the ceremony is where the bride takes claim of the groom takes claim of his bride, removes her from her home, and brings her to a place where she has a purification ceremony. So now we're coming up to that. So this is Jacob's trouble.
So Gil, can any of this basically? It sounds like what you're saying that the current resident of the Oval Office is fulfilling some sort of prophecy. Is there a way from your research that you can tell what type of person would be in the next following him?
If he leaves office, this next president will probably be in office only for 3 months before the meteor shower starts. Mm-hmm. He won't have time to change anything around, and he'll have a devastating problem to deal with. You remember nuclear facilities? What is there, like 108 of them or so? I forgot the exact number. Mm-hmm. But they can't take a tidal wave hitting them. They can't take a meteor shower hitting them. If you lose water for 24 hours, you have a melted core. And some of the older ones take 18 months to cool down. I think they have to come up. Remember Brussels, where they had the terrorists on a train, mm-hmm. and they linked it to the nuclear facility?
Right. Yeah, they were getting ready to do something there. You bet.
They're seeding the minds of the public that nuclear facilities are a threat to by terrorists. Mm-hmm. So they can have a reason to shut them down or reduce the power output of nuclear facility. They're also slowing down the economy, so you won't need as much. They got to figure a way to cool these reactors down before the meteor shower starts.
Really?
So you're going to see something happening here across the board. But remember Jacob's trouble? remember Jacob's brother,
Mm-hmm.
Esau?
Yeah.
Well, we have, which is Islam. Okay? Islam declared a war against Jacob in 2001 against Jews and Christians.
Yep.
Okay? And that war is going to continue until they either win or Yeshua comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he says in the end days, I'll put your enemy over you. We have someone in the White House, which is Esau.
Mm.
You can also go back all the way to the Tower of Babel. Remember Ham, if you read outside books, Noah had the garments of Adam he was wearing. And Ham stole the garments of Noah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Noah couldn't curse him because he was wearing the garments, so he cursed his descendants and marked them. Nimrod was the first black man to call, he was a black man that called, the first man to call himself God on earth. As it was in the beginning, so it shall be at the end. The last man to call himself God on earth will be a black man as well.
Wow. Well, let me ask you something. There seems to be some symbology there. Is there any symbology to the fact that in the Book of Revelation it talks about the seven trumpets and the last trump? Is that representative of a presidential candidate who is sounding an alarm, who is trumpeting the fact that we've been lied to and our whole system is a complete fraud? Is there some synchronicity to that? Some duplicity there with Donald Trump being there?
In Hebrew, you learn that there's no such word as accident, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
There is no such word in Hebrew that means accident.
Well, it does say blow the trumpet at the last trump, man. We could be there. All right, let's go to this next slide of yours that you offer for free there, Gil Broussard. It is called the scale energy. What are we looking at there?
Oh, that's, I just wanted to have a visual representation of, all the way I started with Einstein formula. When you look at a cup of coffee, if you use his energy equals mc squared.
Okay.
All right. Well, a 9-ounce cup of coffee is equivalent to 365 Hiroshima bombs. If you were able to release all of the energy in the atom as we know it today. Okay, so that's how much it takes to get you started in the morning.
Wow.
Okay. All right. So what I did was I was relating earthquake scales and such pertaining to either natural disasters or man-made.
Mm-hmm.
So you can follow it through the scales, and I show the largest man-made explosion is a 50 megaton.
Okay.
Remember, all of the explosives during World War II, if you were to add them up together, it's less than 3 megatons.
Mm-hmm.
One bomb that the Russians exploded in an island north of Siberia was 50 megatons.
Mm-hmm.
One.
Mm-hmm.
And Mount St. Helens was equivalent to 25 megatons. The Tunguska event where it destroyed that forest was anywhere between 20 to 40 megatons.
Mm-hmm.
And that was less than a magnitude 8 earthquake.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of nuclear weapons, it seems to me that that demon in the White House is getting ready to apologize to Hiroshima and Nagasaki for us ending the war with our superior firepower. All right, let's go to the next the slide there, Gil Broussard. It is called, you label it as Timeline of Biblical and Planet 7X Events. What do we got there?
Oh, that's the one that I've listed all of the past events in history that I can find.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot. There's a lot on that page right there, by the way.
People can print that out as a wall chart if they wish, and I give them the measurements.
Well, that's nice and colorful. That's nice and colorful too. I like that. All right. So what are you trying to cram in on that page? Events that begin where and end where? Can you succinctly describe that?
Well, I take it all the way from Adam because it gives us our genealogy, the length of time. Keep in mind, a lot of people are not aware of this, but the Hebrew way of counting, there's no year 0 in an age. When you're born, you're year 1. Okay? So when they say they're 910, in our county, they're 909. And people are not aware of that. So that's why people have a hard time making their charts work. Matter of fact, in southern China, they still count that way today, the ages. So I take it from Adam and I lay down all of these. I was looking for a pattern to see if there was any sort of stable pattern. And it's somewhat stable, but it depends on what it runs into. Remember, like I said, the 3 days of darkness, I need to finish that later. Okay. But what I'm about to make a breakthrough in this is either happen on a year or a Jubilee year, to where the Hebrews were, they had food supplies, because this thing brings 7-year drought, 3.5-year drought coming in, 3.5-year drought leaving. And this is common throughout the biblical records. You can find that. Mm-hmm. You can also look for a double eclipse, a shadow going backwards, different things as that. And so this timeline helps people. It helps them with the secular as well as the biblical records and where we believe that this object, that evidence is pointing to at the time.
You mentioned the audio actually cut out a little bit there, Gil. You said that you were working on a breakthrough.
Yeah. So far, I'm not finished with my research. This is ongoing research. Mm-hmm. So every so often, I will update my charts.
Okay.
And this historical chart, I'm finding the majority of these events I can actually pinpoint them happening on either a Sabbath year or a Jubilee year, when this planet 7X crosses, where the majority of the Hebrews have food supplies prepared. You see? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Hebrews were the least affected, unless they were in a sinful way, then they weren't following him. So.
So everything is following those calendars. So are we in a Sabbath or Jubilee year now?
The Jubilee is started.
Okay, so and how long is that period of time?
Till next March or April.
Okay.
Till the harvest of the barley is deemed to be ripe.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I read this on your website or not, or maybe I heard it in an interview with you, but do you say that when the debris field of Planet 7X hits, that the Earth will stand still?
As prior to the crossing, when the planet crosses our path, it'll probably be like an hour or so in front of us. Remember, Earth travels within 1 hour, 8.4 Earth diameters.
Okay.
That's how far we travel in its path. Mm-hmm. And it passes about an hour in front of us, which roughly passes, from my estimates, and we won't know this until we get, but the biblical records are alluding that it's going to pass between the moon and Earth again, like it did during Joshua's long.
Not much space there for some giant object with a debris field there, Gil.
Well, there's 250,000 miles. Let me give you a little reference.
Yeah.
It's 30 diameters of Earth.
Okay.
Between us and the moon. This object's only 7.
But I mean, what if it's not right in the middle? What if it's a little bit closer to us?
It might be. Don't know. It says, men's hearts shall fail for their sights and what they anticipate is going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to be shocking.
I imagine
so. There are some documents during Joshua. One says 10 times the diameter of the moon. Another one says 50 times the diameter of the moon. Mm-hmm. So I don't know which one it is, but if it's 50, it seems to be the 50 was the correct one, because we used that to calculate the 3 hours of darkness. It worked, and many other ones.
Gil, did Mars used to be closer to the Earth than it is presently?
It was more, for sure. I can tell you that it was. I don't think so.
Okay.
But it wasn't at the same angle that it is right now. It was bumped, and it put it at about 1.5 degrees higher, because the lower half of, I think, like 94% of all its craters are on half of the planet, and that's the southern hemisphere.
Really?
That is because the southern hemisphere crossed a debris field. Only half of it would cross into the debris field until it bumped into it, and it made it into about, gave it another 1.5 degree higher orbit, or orbital tilt to it. So now it doesn't cross the debris field anymore. But, about 92% or so of all of its meteor crater is on the southern hemisphere, and this answers that because it crossed into the debris field of this object.
Do you suspect that at some point there was life on Mars, and perhaps this debris field killed them off?
No, we could easily see structures, and I'm not talking about a mountain that may look like a pyramid. We should see, just like if Earth was void of plant life, you would see still the structures of roads. You'd see everything. You don't see that.
But there are objects that have been picked up with the rover and through telescopes as well, Gil, that indicate some sort of, there's an enamel box, which is what they describe it as a square cut object, which cannot happen naturally. Various what looks to be face on Mars type structures, glass structures. There does seem to be some evidence that something was there.
Simple shapes, when people qualify things that it can't happen naturally, sometimes they exaggerate.
Yeah. Oh, yes. They want to make a story too.
Yes, out of millions of tries of explosions and everything and meteor hits, on occasion you have something that have maybe 3 or 4 corners of it would be square, and some of it may look like a pyramid. But when you have civilizations, you're going to have a hell of a lot more than just one.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Hey, Gil, in the first hour, you mentioned that other historical books and writings, civilizations confirm or agree with this Planet 7X, the destroyer. Is any of Nostradamus's writings agree with these findings of yours?
I don't dwell in his writings, so I wouldn't. Some people, it's too vague for me to give any scientific. I'm looking for hard data. I'm looking for orbital or a circumstance where it describes it tilting, gives me a year, gives me a meteor shower, gives me even some of these plagues that were labeled in the past. A plague today we relate to disease. The word plague in the past, anything that would misfortune that would cause you sores. Well, the dust from these comets can also make sores. Okay, just remember they had a lake in Africa that spewed CO2 and went through the village and killed a bunch of them, and these people had sores. The ones who lived had sores. It wasn't made by a virus. Okay, so but that would be still considered a plague in ancient terms. So I'm interested in articles that are the sequence of events proves out models, and that's what science is.
Okay.
If you can take observed phenomena, bring it to the laboratory, and show that it's repeatable, that's science.
Okay. All right, let's go to the other slide, which is you title as the Messiah's sacrifice. What is that slide describing?
Multiple things. If you look at the mountain that, remember Mount Moriah was where Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac.
Yes.
And the angel stopped, but yet there was a lamb right next that had his head caught in thorns. Well, that exact mountain was the exact spot after it was quarried. Remember when they built the wall of Jerusalem the second time, they quarried half of that mountain away. Then that's when the skull appeared, Golgotha.
Okay.
Well, when they quarried half that mountain away, Yeshua was sacrificed in the exact same spot, but just lower. Above him was where Abraham is. And underneath there, Solomon talks about a chamber, a secret chamber, which many hundreds of years later, the priests, when they were when the temple was under attack, the first time, Solomon's temple, they forgot about the secret passage to be able to hide the ark, and the Father spoke to him, or Yeshua did, whichever.
Okay.
And told him how to hide the ark, and it was in a secret chamber. That chamber was underneath Yeshua when he came for the second temple, because there was no ark at that temple that was above ground. His blood, when the earth, remember the earth racked open, his blood, when the centurions pierced him, at that time the earth opened up exact, and his blood fell on the ark, fulfilling the Mekra, the rehearsal patterns. The priests used to spray the lamb's blood on the ark. Now this is the real event.
Okay.
And this was marked by Abraham. There was a Mekra that Abraham was causing, practicing, or testing out, where a father is sacrificing his son. And then the lamb's head is caught in thorns. Yeshua's had thorns on his head. Half that mountain was quarried to make this happen. And the chamber was on it. There was a double eclipse at the time. And so I show all of this, and I show the reference, the path of this, where it travels around the sun in a counterclockwise method.
Is Gil, is that ark still there at where it was originally in Golgotha?
Yes, it probably is, but no one's going to be able to pull it out except Yeshua himself.
Okay.
It even says in I think some of the Quran teachers are that this Mahdi is going to pull an ark out of the Sea of Galilee. Well, that's going to be a fake one.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So if we have any ark that comes out for the second temple, it's a fake. It won't have Yeshua's blood on it. Mm-hmm. And that's what's even it says where there's going to be a lookalike, a Christ lookalike that walks out of the desert. Judaism and Islam only recognize Yeshua as a prophet, not as a Messiah. This Mahdi is going to be standing, this Christ-like figure is going to come out of the desert, and he's going to be a prophet. That's the false prophet.
Okay.
And he's going to point to the Mahdi and says, he's your Messiah. And the Muslims and the Jews will buy into that.
Let's get back to, you said you didn't want to end the broadcast without going back to the 3 days of darkness. Let's get back on that topic, Gil. What do you want to tell us on that?
Well, if we take a look at that, for us to get a 3 days of darkness, you're looking at we can prove now when the planet was coming in, it collided with Ceres. Ceres used to be a planet, which is now an asteroid, it's a debris field.
Okay.
That slowed the forward motion to 1/20th. So as it came around the sun, it gave us 3 days of darkness. So how can we prove this even further? Well, the next event that Planet X shows up is only 52 years later. And the next one after that is 131. The next one after that was 336. Then you get to Hezekiah, 358. It took 4 trips basically 4 trips around the sun before it regained its normal orbit. The first trip around was only 52 years around, and that's where you got Joshua's long day. The next one at 131 was Job's trouble and Ruth. Remember, Ruth had 10 years of drought, not 7. And it was during a Jubilee because she could get her land back. Remember, Boaz was watching his field. He was not harvesting his own field. He was watching the poor harvest it. That's a Sabbath year. You see?
I see.
Then 336 years later was when Saul and David were having their argument. Saul was trying to kill David. Well, that's when the Star of David showed up. Then you get to these three events in one, which is Jonah of Nineveh, the 40-day warning, the shadow going backwards with Hezekiah, and the 185,000 soldiers that died just outside of Jerusalem. That happened 5 months later from Hezekiah's time when the shadow went backwards, because that happened at nighttime. The daytime event was a shadow. So it proves out in the model.
We've had a lot of people on this program over the years that have sort of set dates, and in most cases those dates don't really pan out. Are you quite sure that the scenarios and the research that you've done is accurate? And if for some reason it didn't, a date would say past the Sabbath of the Jubilees, would you reorient your schedule?
I can only get, just like I said earlier, I can only say it's 99.9. I can't give you 100% that this is the Jubilee. There is certain markers in the biblical records that I can attach to astronomy records, like Halley's Comet with the destruction of the Second Temple happened in 68 AD, not 70 AD. And that's documented in the Jewish text, and I can prove it out because of Halley's Comet came. And we can also have the Nebra disk that shows we can calculate when they went into Canaan. But I cannot, since no one living has ever lived through all of these Jubilees to document for sure this is it. Only thing I can say is for people to pay attention to it, to be attentive, as the text says. He says, adulterous and wicked generation will ignore the signs. Well, like I told you, NASA or any astronomer cannot predict Libya being fallen, Egypt falling, Syria falling, Iraq falling, and yet in the future, Iran, neither did it say that Damascus would be a ruinous heap. How much more would a person need to say that, yeah, things are kind of lining up? So he said the only time his people are actually protected is when they got food stored for economic collapse and have their finances.
Well, Gil, would it be possible that somebody who hasn't prepared or who hasn't got their finances in order, that God would find them one of the chosen and just put it in there, just make it appear? Or is he put that in the sole responsibility of us earth dwellers? I mean, could he not provide supernaturally like the loaves and the fishes?
He can, but he also says the rich during the Sabbath year is supposed to turn over their fields to the poor. Well, we don't own our own fields anymore. There's certain people that have the ability to invest in things. He says my faithful servant will invest. The one that does not invest is a worthless servant. He throws him away. He says he casts him out in outer. Right now, there's an opportunity, that a strong possibility that the Iraqi dinar will go up many times above what we are looking at. And with that blessing, it's not to boost up your 401k plan. It's to help other people who want to follow his instructions. If there's people out there that really want to follow the Torah, where he says this, on a Sabbath and a Jubilee, you prepare supplies and resources for 1 year on those years. Well, there's enough people throughout the United States to help their brothers during this time. But he says also, do not cast pearls before swine. If they're not willing to follow his instructions, remember, there's a great falling away before he returns. Most of these are going to be Christians that do not follow his laws. They've forsaken his laws. And so that's going to be a great falling away, because they're going to go through economic hard times, and stand in food lines for rationing by their government, and they're going to get chips in them and everything. So there's going to be a great falling away.
So Gil, if you have prepared for such an event, and say your neighbor knocks on your door, would you check and say, do you celebrate the Sabbath? Do you keep the holy days, the feast days? Are you a believer? Would you say that they are obviously the 5 virgins who have no oil, who say, give us of your oil? Are you prepared to say, I'm not giving you my oil to those that do not fit the description of someone who has prepared and followed the feast and holy days?
What did Yeshua say to the ones who were foolish and didn't have any oil? He says, go away, I don't know you. Those are his words. Now, if someone is knocking during this time period where they've already heard my voice and already should have read the Bible and understood, and he said for you to prepare, if they're not listening to the Almighty and they're knocking, that automatically tells me they're not following his words. They're following some priest in front of a pulpit who's telling them, don't listen to the Almighty's laws. Well, if they want to listen to him, then there's going to be a great falling away. And they will go through this economic crash and hardship of food is for the ones who do not listen to what he said.
Wow.
And that's plain as day. Plain as day. If he's telling you ahead of time in Revelation, economic collapse is coming and famine, and then he's already told you in the past books, on these years you shall put, and you decide not to do it, isn't that following the wicked and adulterous generation that do not see the signs and follow his instructions? Yes, it does. And therefore, they will say God doesn't exist because they're suffering. Because someone in front of the pulpit said, you won't suffer. You're going to be clicked out of here in a snap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what the text says, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So
you would say, so would you say Tim LaHaye and his ilk are false prophets?
Let it be declared the way it turns out. They will, if they're right, then they won't suffer. Mm-hmm. If they're wrong, they're going to be suffering with the ones they guided. Mm-hmm. And they will not be teachers in this next kingdom. Mm-hmm. They will be the least of the least. So
sort of in a little recap, see if I'm getting this clear, because this is a question that comes up when it comes to sort of prepping, that if you perceive we're talking about when you're faced with somebody saying, give us of your oil, that they are the 5 virgins who never prepared, didn't believe, and you said false priests or false teaching in a church, but that's one group of people. Then there is the second group, which is who never believed in Christ or in the Bible, and accepted him as Lord and Savior. The secular liberal types; those are definitely off the table, right?
So you got to understand the difference between evil and wicked. The root word today, they're almost synonymous, and they're not in the ancient texts.
Really?
Wicked comes from the root word, a candle wick maker, where you take 2 threads and you intertwine them to make a wick. One who's doing wicked is taking 1 thread of truth and 1 thread of falseness and intertwining it. He says the wicked will suffer during the tribulation. The evil are the only ones that suffer through the 7 bowl judgments of the Father. Okay, not the wicked, and that word is mistranslated. You got to be careful. The wicked are just people who are misguided.
Okay,
and they won't step away from them. They loving. Remember, he says, and they will teach things that are sweet to the ear. Okay, and it's not what is written. Go back and check what is written, and you got to go outside your text. You got to go back to the Hebrew and start looking at these things. You're going to have to be like Abraham. Step out of some of this. He says that there's many
Okay, so
Otherwise,
the wicked then get the bowls of judgment, or the evil get the bowls of judgment. The wicked, who's that? The Joel Osteen viewers? I don't know.
I'm not going to name names.
I will.
Okay,
I'm going to do it.
Names.
I'm going to name names. I'm going to name names all over. That's what I do.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so the wicked now do they have an opportunity for redemption, or is it over?
No, they can change at any time. Just like Abraham. Remember, Abraham was in Babylon at one time. He stepped out of. Okay, he was the first Hebrew. Hebrew means to step out of. He wasn't born Hebrew. Mm-hmm. We can do the same thing. He says the whole world today is Babylon. When we take that step of faith out of that system, and we adhere to his laws. Look, one of his laws says don't have sex with animals. You know, in Europe, in certain countries, I won't name the country, that bestiality is now no longer against the law.
Sweden?
I won't say no. It's not, but I'm not going to say which one. But I'm just saying you can look it up. You can look it up. It's in the internet.
Okay.
The
Belgium?
further we go away from the Almighty's laws that are structured in the book, the worse this world is getting.
Well, look, man, half the Middle East is having sex with goats. So, I mean, don't they qualify?
Yeah, but weren't we taught from the pulpit, say we don't have to follow the Old Testament? But yet Yeshua followed all of the laws. Only the law he broke was man-made add-ons. The rabbis added it, made it very hard. He says, my yoke is easy to follow. Theirs is hard. Mm-hmm. And so if, like, I can tell you numerous times, people have come to me from cancer from the neck to the groin, completely full with cancer. The doctors turn them away. Says, I can't give you, if I give you that level of chemo, I'd kill you. Mm-hmm. I can't give you that level of radiation to heal you. Says, go home and prepare your papers. You're about to die. They come to me with no hope. When I hear that, I said, it's the best thing they ever told you. Then I instruct them on what his instructions are. Eat certain foods. And then, because our farmers are not farming properly, not letting the land rest, I give them a mineral supplement, a mineral and vitamin supplement to boost the vegetable. Guess what? The cancer goes away. Cancer goes away. Now,
all right.
If we want to deny his science of healing, not a single one of us can go in heaven and stand before. Says, I prayed to you. How come you didn't heal me? And he'll say, the only thing he has to answer, how come you didn't listen to me what I wrote already? It's our own fault. There's nothing that anyone can go, just like for this economic collapse, just like for this food shortage that's coming, no one will have an excuse in front of the Father and the Son. Mm-hmm. Because they were already told, and it's whether or not you choose to follow it or not.
All right, so you is the famine and economic collapse separate from the debris field of Planet 7X, or is it happen at the same time?
That's a good question. You're the first one to answer that. You have two halves of the earth. One is in the daytime, one is at night, but it's the same period of time. You can be 24 hours difference in a clock, but it's the same time period, basically, on space. Remember, there's 24 hours around a globe at any given time. Well, the daylight side is being hit with a meteor shower at the same time as the nighttime at midnight, Jerusalem time, that Yeshua is picking you up, bringing you to a place in the wilderness. The only way that you can experience the mightiness of the Father when he shakes, rattles, and rolls this earth is for you to be on earth, not hurt. In this place of safety, which is remember, it's follow the Hebrew wedding. You're all together during a mikra, a purification ceremony. If it was true that anybody would be accepted, then how come the foolish virgins were not accepted? It says, go away, I don't know you. Because they didn't have their timing right. They didn't understand his clues. They were still following some form of doctrine that came off a pulpit, not what his literal words are saying. You get his literal words right, you will be brought to the place of safety. Mm-hmm. It's an open book test, and hardly anybody even knows what chapter to turn to because they're not taught Hebrew. If Hebrew was taught in the churches, there wouldn't be any more doctrine problems.
Well, that's one thing you give the Muslims credit for. They only have one version of their book, and there's like 50 of them on the Protestant side. But Gil, I can hear somebody in the background just saying, "Well, I can't prepare. I don't have enough money to buy prep goods for a year, and I don't. I'm deep in debt, and there's no way I'm going to get paid off." Do they get a pass because they want to, but they can't?
Yes. Reason why? Remember, in the Exodus of Egypt, they're all slaves, right?
Okay.
How much property and wealth does a slave have?
Not much.
What did they leave with? Didn't they leave with wagons
Everything.
full of gold
Yep.
and silver?
Yep.
You know whose gold and silver they were leaving with?
Pharaohs?
No, Joseph. Joseph was the second richest man in the world.
Really?
Where he was right under Pharaoh. All right? When the Hebrews went into slavery, they took all of Joseph's inheritance and they had it amongst themselves. Well, the Hebrews just reclaimed it. Remember when the three Magi went to see Yeshua?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was a year earlier that they saw the sign in the heavens. Remember, they didn't have plane flight, they didn't have cabs or nothing. At that time, you had to set up a camel train of supplies, and because they're part of the royal household, that means they had 200 or 300 guards with them, and they had Daniel's treasure. Remember, Daniel was a eunuch. He lived within the palace, and he was advisor on the three kings.
But what's a eunuch now?
If you're going to live within the palace where the king has his harem, you lose your manhood.
Okay.
All right. So
very diplomatic, Eric Gill.
Right. So that's for anyone who lives within the palace walls. And Daniel lived within the palace walls. And he lived within 3 kings, and therefore he had the wealth. He was a top advisor, just like Joseph was. So he was the second richest man in the kingdom. Well, he told his magi, the astronomers that he trained, when you see these signs in the sky, I'm showing you, deliver my treasure to the Messiah.
Gil, would you consider yourself a modern day magi?
Magi means astronomer, yeah. There's many of us today, but do it along the lines of the biblical text says.
Didn't the Magi get supernatural protection to get away from the Egyptians?
That I don't know. That was the Egyptians. I don't know.
Yeah, well, didn't it say that when they went to visit the baby Jesus that the Magi were given a.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. They were given supernatural protection.
See, for them to truly believe that Yeshua was a king, keep in mind, that was a year later. It mentions him as being a toddler. Remember what I said? Herod said, kill all babies 2 and under. Well, in our age county, that would be 1 and under. Okay? And the angel had just told Joseph that Herod was coming after him.
Now
here comes.
Go ahead.
So here comes this Magi with more than just a little bit of handful of gold, and they had Daniel's treasure loaded on the back of camels. Now, these people probably provided 30 or 40 guards to go with Mary and Joseph to Egypt and stay with them 5 years and escorted them back to Jerusalem, because that's what you would properly do to a king, provide him with protection.
And I bet those Muslims were probably chasing after those camels, wanting something. Here's a question coming in for you, Gil. Do you ever plan on moving to Jerusalem?
Yes, when we see these, in Revelation, which is Yeshua giving the information to John, He says, I will provide a sign in heaven for you. And this planet, whenever it comes, he says, this is going to be the worst event in all of Earth's history. It's not Noah's flood. This next event is the worst event in all of Earth's history. So, the only way to really escape this is to be in Yeshua's escape plan. And only, he says, a remnant. Remnant is a subset of the whole, not the entire body. Because remember Israel, the northern tribe of Israel, the 10 tribes? The reason why they're not allowed back into the land is why? They're blending paganism with Torah.
Gil, where it says,
and that's why they're still not there today.
Well, let me ask you. I don't know, this may not be an applicable scripture, but it says, the scripture that says, "He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abideth under the shadow of the Almighty." What is the secret place?
He may have more than one, but I do know there's some place in the wilderness. See, we don't go. It's some people claim that it's Petra, and I do know some people out there going to try to go to Petra before it's time. And under martial law conditions, you'll be shot at the border. And that's not following a Hebrew wedding. And the groom has to pick up the bride.
Now, when you say wilderness, though, just to recap a little clarification there, you're not talking about, say, wilderness as in a forest, right?
No, there's not that many forests in Israel. No, it says he'll bring it to the way. It could be the desert. It could be Petra. It could be another place. He says he has a place prepared for us already that he's going to bring us to. Okay. And that's in the wilderness, he says. So wilderness has never been referred to heaven. It's never have. And that is correctly translated. It does say wilderness.
Well, I would think some people believe they're in a wilderness now as the world rejects those who have a morality based in biblical truth. They're in a wilderness all by themselves, it seems like, and being isolated more and more. So more people may perceive that where they exist, whether their employees or their neighbors or even their family, that they may feel like they're in a wilderness alone, bearing the burdens of believing in the truth, as is being roundly rejected and turned over by those in power right now.
We could look at like that, but that would be, I think, taking it out of context compared to what is actually implying. I think we spiritualize things that are actually factual more than it. Okay. Sure, things in the Bible or Scripture has sometimes double and triple meanings, but I wouldn't lessen an actual event by stating it differently at the moment. I think we're going to be brought to a literal place in the wilderness, and it's only going to be a remnant. That remnant may be about 1.5 million or so people, because whenever that's about what it's going to be roughly almost the same number as what left for the Exodus. Some numbers go 1.5 million, some go up to 3.
Okay, so now I'm getting some ESP here from people. They're saying, "Hey, I want to make sure I'm part of the remnant." So how does the remnant know they are the remnant? And if they're not a remnant, can they become a remnant?
Well, one thing, he judges you by your heart and mind whether or not you're going to go there. Remember, 40% of the people that show up in Jerusalem will not make it to the place of safety. That's the foolish ones. Okay. The ones who do make it is the bride, that's 144,000, and they're only from Israeli tribes, except for the tribe of Dan is not mentioned. The bridemaid, there's 5 times more of them than the bride, and they can be from any tribe. And there's 5 times more foolish as well, okay? Now, the way the foolish will make it is that they'll have to go get their heads cut off. They said the Antichrist calls them out. They spend 10 days in jail, and after that, their heads are cut off. Whoever do not take the mark will have a special place in the New Jerusalem.
But you're not saying then that if somebody who perceives that they are a remnant, that they're going to get a plane ticket to Jerusalem. You're not saying that, are you? I mean, are you saying that if you don't get the plane ticket materialize, in your inbox or in your mail, if you don't get that, then you're not a remnant? Or are you saying that the
No.
remnant has to buy their own and know what they have to do to get over there?
Just like the slaves of Egypt that left with wagons of gold and silver, if someone actually wants to follow the Torah and his rehearsal patterns, someone's going to provide for them, the means to do this if they're totally broke.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're asking me that we don't need to follow the Old Testament and be in Israel for Passover. I never said that. I never will say that. The text literally says Passover, you are instructed to be physically in Jerusalem as a rehearsal pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, be on Mount Zion. And Mount Zion is not where the Temple Mount is. Mount Zion is 600 feet south of there. They found the remains of Solomon's temple. It's not that wall that they're praying, the Wailing Wall, is actually the wall of the ancient Roman fort.
Could we say then that, and I don't know if you're going to announce it on your website, I don't, maybe you will, maybe you won't, but when you get your plane tickets, should that be our cue that it's time to go?
There'll be no announcing. The internet would be down. You have to know it when you see the site, when you see the peace agreement being signed or about to be signed.
Well, if there's no internet, there's not going to be any flights.
Well, the internet will come. The internet is going to go down, but it's going to come back up for the peace agreement because the whole world sees the Antichrist getting his glory. Only way you can do that is if the internet's back up. Los Alamos is testing a new internet for 4 years now. It's impervious to virus and any attack, but they're not implementing it because it doesn't serve their purpose right now. They want this to go down because they don't want amateur astronomers taking close-up pictures and details showing you there's a real planet right there come approaching. They have to silence that the internet. So whenever you see the peace agreement, remember, seal 3 has to happen, economic collapse. Seal 4, famine, pestilence. They're going to ration money with a bail-in, ration food, and ration fuel.
Okay, and who is the peace agreement going to be with?
Muslims, along with the Western nations, will be put under pressure if the Antichrist, whoever he's going to be, is going to strike this deal with that Israel will have to give up the West Bank. Whether or not Israel wants to or not, they'll be forced to by the nations. Because remember how Israel is going to be the weight of a millstone around each nation's neck? The economy, the terrorists are going to be attacking all the Western nations, and they're going to keep this attack until Israel gives up the West Bank.
Okay. All right. So when they give up the West Bank, the remnant needs to get on a plane quick.
There you go. You have about 50 days before the Feast of Passover or so will happen.
Interesting.
This is when you see the two witnesses show up, either Moses and Elijah. Now, keep in mind, that's on the 3 days before the arrival of Yeshua. Well, just before that, right at the 3-day mark is when they turn off all generators globally because we're starting to enter into the plasma tail. Earth is starting to slow down. And this will be nighttime so you won't once you hear about the two prophets, you can't fly then.
Okay.
Because they're not allowing flights.
But
so you got to be there ahead of time.
All right. So, but people can then, when they see that peace agreement, that is a defined moment in time, and that is the call to action.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Because one of the old prophets says, when Israel changes its borders, the hand of protection over Israel is removed. I see it as there's a big Israel and a little Israel. The 10 tribes in the north were not allowed back because they're doing wicked. They're blending. Okay? Well, big Israel and Europe, Canada, Australia is forcing little Israel to give up the West Bank. His hand of protection will be removed from the United States. I would not want to be in the United States after that his hand of protection is removed.
Okay. All right, Gil, we're coming to the end of our broadcast. Anything you'd like to say, freewheeling time right now, about your website, your research, you go right ahead.
If people have a pastor or a Bible group or relatives that they have this is a very difficult subject to talk about. I have a DVD that only gives a proper introduction, showing the factual that this planet is real. Then everything after that, the biblical references are all free to look at the YouTube, to where it points biblical. I'm just saying that these biblical stories are literally real, and the Almighty is real. His hand is in every one of these, and it's gonna. Look, no one else can predict this timing of Revelation the way it is 2,000 years ago, at the level that it's at. You know, that defies science in itself, because only someone outside time can do this and prepare people. Where time is near, be aware, and you will see things happen, and you know where you are then, and what to wait for.
Okay. All right, Gil Broussard, I appreciate you coming on the Edge television broadcast. Did you enjoy the interview?
Oh, yes, Daniel. Thank you. It's
all right.
A pleasure.
All right. Then I'll tell you what, we'll invite you back sometime in the future. Would that be all right?
Yes. And if I could advertise your time, and you'd have more people asking questions.
Okay.
And we can answer them for them.
Okay. Very good. Gil Broussard, I appreciate you coming on the program tonight.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good evening. All right, everybody. That was Gil Broussard talking about Planet 7X, the destroyer. It's out there and it's heading our way. You better be ready to go. Hopefully, everyone watching this show is a remnant. If you're not a remnant, I guess you need to find out how to become one. I guess that's simple enough to say right there. Next week, we're going to have Dave Hodges talk about political anarchy. And I suppose there's a lot tonight was not directly referred to the political situation, but certainly the who's currently in the White House was obliquely referenced, and maybe some other things. Maybe even Trump was brought into the conversation a little bit as the last Trump. We never know. But we'll talk next week with Dave Hodges. 2 weeks, James Perloff. He's talking about global destruction, but I don't think he's going to be talking about the 7X kind. We want to find out which is closer to what is really happening. May 7th, Shannon Ray Davis is going to have a mass exorcism on the program. All right. I appreciate everybody's great questions tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Daniel Ott for The Edge. Bye-bye.